excited to welcome him back to Ashbury today. Please join me in welcoming Brooks.
Thank you, everybody. First of all, thank you, Mrs. Yoden, very much for asking me to be here, Mr. Matthews, Mr. Putt, and everyone for listening. So obviously, the main issue today we're talking about is mental health, and I'm extremely honored to be able to share my story and help eliminate stigma forever. So it's really interesting, actually. I mean, when all of this stuff, and I'll explain everything, happened to me, I was at Ashbury, grade 10-ish, some symptoms began, and overall, what I'm going to do is explain what happened, how I dealt with it, and my whole view on what mental health and mental illness really is these days, and how society actually needs to evolve its views and help everybody feel comfortable talking about it in general. So, what is it? What are these symptoms? What are these things that make you feel sick or ill, or whatever these terms would be? Well, when I first started feeling this stuff, it was just as simple as this unexplained sadness, this extra self-consciousness, this anxiety that just started out of nowhere. There was no real reasons for it. I was in, most of this started grade 11, and I just lost enjoyment in everything pretty much. The real sort of initiating thought was, I'm playing video games one day, and it's just like, I don't enjoy this whatsoever right now, and I'm used to really loving this stuff. Not wanting to socialize, grades going down. So I finally make the decision, I'm going to tell my parents, something's wrong here. It's not, I was grounded for a while that year. It's not being grounded, it's more than that. I don't know what's happening. And, one thing leads to another. I go to a family doctor, tell them what's happening, and, okay, you're diagnosed with depression. Okay, what does that even mean? And they put me on an antidepressant right away. And that's pretty much it. It's like, okay, I need to kind of deal with feeling down. What is that? Where do I go from here? So one thing leads to another. 8 months go by, no real changes. I'm starting to get more and more anxious, and it's just as simple as, I'm a teenager. I don't know. It's total uncertainty, just totally in the dark. What's happening? Start self-medicating. Start drinking more. Marijuana. Started doing that just trying to get these symptoms totally out of the way, so eliminate everything. And finally, I'm seeing more doctors, and they start telling my parents, your son is very sick. Just that simple, really. Anyway, things keep escalating. Finally, I'm put on a new antidepressant that shoots me into what you would call a manic state, which is part of bipolar, where there's racing thoughts, have to leave the house, can't sit still, it's out of control. And I finally end up doing some pretty wild stuff. Like, I stop going to school, I tell my parents, you know what, I can't go, I have to figure this out. And it's just like, I can tell I'm starting to lose my mind. Like, there's something going on here that's not right. So, looking at the resources that are in Ottawa, you can't really, I don't know what's exactly the situation right now, but you couldn't go into a hospital and be admitted without either trying to commit suicide or the police bringing you in. So my parents did what they had to do, and the police brought me into the hospital, and I was admitted for a month, put on 4 medications, diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I'll explain that in a second. And then about 13 medications on and off for the next few years. So, schizoaffective disorder, right off the bat, is similar to schizophrenia, but you don't see or hear anything that's not there. Okay, so, check. So, you don't, like, you have these notions that people don't like you. I thought my family hated me, my friends hated me. It was just all these feelings that weren't quote-unquote real. So, long story short, it was a pretty rough time. All the way through high school, I went to Sheridan College for Film and Television. When I first got there, I actually had to come back home at the beginning. It was it was just a disaster. So that's sort of the first part. Obviously I could go on and on about details here, but it's a short amount of time, so I'll just keep rolling. So the next kind of phase of what I want to talk about is, okay, how did I start dealing with this stuff? Well, it did get to that point where nothing was changing for so long that I decided, I'm either going to end this or I'm going to keep moving, and just decided, okay, just keep going. Just what is the end of this? And finally, I did find one medication particularly that did actually create the first sort of sign of relief that at least helped me get to the point where I could start to train and work on my mind and get to a healthier place. So overall, the medication, sure, that's something that's great. It makes a difference, but I believe it's a lot more than that. It's really working on yourself, figuring out your fears, what you're scared of, just everything about yourself, really doing a ton of self-exploration. And the big thing that changed for me was when I separated myself from myself. And I thought, what, here's what doctors and everyone are saying is sick. I can see that. I can see that these feelings aren't real. I can see that I shouldn't be feeling sad. But now I'm looking at it from a point of view that sees it from another perspective. So I started thinking, what's really sick here? I mean, this is a point of view that is sick, but there's a part of me that's not sick. I can see this from another perspective, and I'm going to beat this. So I started working really hard at figuring out, okay, what are my fears? What am I scared of? Why do I feel this way? And I started pushing the limits of anxiety. If I felt extremely anxious about going out to a social situation, I just pushed it, I did it. I wrote everything down, I started journals. Cognitive behavior therapy is typical with handling this kind of stuff. It's really as simple as analyzing your thoughts, analyzing what you're doing, and working towards it. Long story short, I tried a whole bunch of techniques, and I just really made a mission out of it. Like we're talking about the film productions, I turned it into a type of a production in a way. And I would write journals and have my own techniques where today would be a 78% day, the next day would be 90, or it would go down to 20. Like I just really created a lot of this stuff on my own. Long story short, I got to the point where I started feeling better, tons of ups and downs with different medications. The details go on and on. But the main message here about stigma is that I actually see this now in my life as a blessing and as something that's absolutely strengthened me and brought me to a place of pure gratitude for feeling good and feeling like I can operate every day. Where I thought, when I was sitting in high school here, I thought, can I make it through this? I'm never going to have a girlfriend. My parents thought maybe he's going to live at home for the rest of his life. And now I'm here talking. It's an extreme honor to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling good these days, and there is absolutely every single reason why people can fight through this and make it happen. And right now, stigma is the #1 thing that has to change, because you can't just say, hey, you're sick, you have to not be sick. Like, what does that even mean? What I think has to happen is that people need to recognize, I can use whatever this is. People don't exactly know what the causes are. Chemical imbalance could happen on its own. It could be stemmed from an event in your life. But the bottom line is, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling anxious, look at life, right? We're these human beings thrown on a planet. We're going to die one day. It's crazy. It's a pretty wild ride, no matter what. So to be able to single things out and say, okay, well, you're sick and you're not sick, and that's normal and that's not normal, it's just too much categorization. So what I really think needs to happen is that people need to say, sure, maybe I don't feel perfect, maybe I feel anxious or down, but this is your journey, your own mission, and you need to basically step up and decide what it is for yourself. I think, it always depends. Medication is a way to go. I would definitely recommend always talking things through, exploring many options before just quickly jumping to it. But it really is a customized tactic for every situation. And nowadays I look at the whole spectrum and I just feel like there's a whole direction that this can take, where people start to feel comfortable, they talk about it, and it's really the transition, I think, from the black and white, you know, you're ill, you're not ill, to all the shades of gray. We all feel on and off days. We all feel a little more anxious one day. We all get tired, you know, all this stuff happens. You know, I thought, hey, public speaking, I used to be terrified of and I couldn't do it at all. And, you know, I turned it into, well, I'll just call that an anxiety. I'll just call that part of an illness and I'll attack it and get over it. You know, when it came down to pitching films, when I was at Dr. Phil, I wasn't feeling too good. I was terrified to pitch anything, and now, you know, I'm not the best pitcher ever, but I don't mind going into any room, pitching anybody, and it's just using all of these techniques that are very similar to what you read in business books and marketing on how to get ahead, how to, you know, not be afraid of failure. I think in the end you can really, you know, bring it all together. So anyway, you know, this is not a lot of time to talk about it, but the biggest message is that there is hope, there's more than hope, there's a way to really make this work. And I think as stigma goes down, we're all going to start to really pick up momentum and get through things in a much more efficient way. And that's a big summary right there. I think that's pretty solid. How are we doing on time? Okay, well anyway guys, I'm actually writing a book about this. I took journals through my entire experience for years. I have about like hundreds of pages. And I'm going to put the actual journal entries on exactly how it felt at the time. I have records of all of my doctor's notes. I'm going to put their notes in with what they thought and my perspective now of how I analyze and see what was happening at the time. Right now the book's called The Lens. It could change titles, but if you go to whatisthelens.com, then it's a Facebook page, and it's not happening right this second, but it's in progress. Anyway, I really appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much. And